Hi, my name is Andrew Wright, and for this week we're going to be discussing topics about what particular sources that we were able to find in the ProQuest historical newspapers that we could maybe use for a United States History 2 course. United States History 2 course is it is a very unique course because so many people have different ideas about which topics are best suited for a U.S. history course. One of the things I talked about in my abstract is that I've noticed in courses that I have taken and courses that I've taken over as a professor and as an undergraduate student is that how in the beginning during the Reconstruction, a lot of people gloss over those topics of Reconstruction, and they shouldn't do that because if you look at the way that a U.S. History 2 course set up, it should be ending right at the Civil War. Like at the end of the Civil War, once we hit Appomattox in the courthouse, that should be the end of U.S. History 1. And we should immediately jump, when you jump into U.S. History 2, it should immediately be from the Reconstruction on. And I know a lot of times when I look at some of these U.S. history textbooks, they skip over the Reconstruction entirely to jump into Johnson's presidency. And the Reconstruction was a big part of his presidency. And it's important that you talk to the students about what role Reconstruction had on America moving forward, and even something as simple as the Confederate generals being pardoned, which is something that should have never happened, how that affected how people saw how whites in certain positions or in who had certain job titles were able to be treated. That was something that resonated for years and years to come. So the three sources that I picked up was the first one was Margaret Barham, the Cold Cases of the Jim Crow Era. It's always important to talk about Jim Crow when you talk about U.S. history too, because it was such an important part of our history of shaping our culture, not just from an African American standpoint, but from a human standpoint. It was important that those laws were changed, and it's important to talk about that. And that was one source that helped that. The other one was by Donald Rumsfeld. It was The Price of Freedom in Iraq. Donald Rumsfeld, of course, is a former Secretary of Defense, but that one is important because that is the major war of this era. That is a major war. Every single generation has had a major war. I know my grandfather, his war was World War II. My father was Vietnam. My war was that I fought in was Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I know that my son, when he gets a certain age, if he decides to join the military, he's going to have a war. So this is important to include the war because we still have soldiers, Marine, airmen, and sailors fighting in the Middle East, and it's important to include that war that we're currently fighting and why the backstory for that war and how important that war has been. And I even go as far personally when I teach that course is to talk about the major battles within that war. Now, of course, my school is a bit different because I currently teach an American military history course, which I'm able to focus and hone in on Operation Iraqi Freedom and talk about the particular battles. I know a lot of people aren't blessed with that situation. They had to gloss over many of the battles in Operation Iraqi Freedom, but I think to not talk about Operation Iraqi Freedom is you're doing your class a great disservice. The last one is by Lee Rose. What came after their era of Reconstruction? That talks about America and how America was able to function after the Reconstruction. I think that is important because you have to talk about it. You can't gloss over Reconstruction, like I said before. But that book is a bridge between what happened with Reconstruction and the Jim Crow era, and what was that middle portion. And I think that is a good source to have. And I think all three of those sources can play a major role in U.S. history too, if you dive into those topics. Again, I'll look forward to seeing your replies, and I look forward to speaking with you all this week.